All right, everybody, welcome back to episode 7 of ObscuraCast. We're back with another episode for you guys. Today, we're going to be talking about something a little different. I know last episode when we finished, we were talking about possibly doing an AI episode, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing. So, as always, I have my co-host, Dan O'Neill. What's going on, brother? How's your evening going?
Evening's going good. Colts pissed me off. Yeah.
Like I said before the podcast, when we were talking, you could be 0-4 like my Saints. But anyways.
Good.
So we're going to sort of get into AI. It's going to be a general conversation. As always, you guys know how this stuff goes. We're going to have some talking points ready for you guys. Most of the time, Dan's usually in the driver's seat as far as giving information and sort of fleshing out the topics, and we just sort of go through them. Today, we're going to take a little bit of a turn, just being a tech guy. I probably, if not, certainly have more of a foray into AI. I've worked with it more hands-on experience. So Dan's going to sort of steer the conversation and sort of get us going. Like I said, we have talking points, but if we go off on tangents, we'll try to sort of bring it back to what we were originally talking about. So it's a little bit easier for you guys to digest. And we're also doing this through a new program through Spotify, so we're going to give this a shot. But I hope you guys enjoy the episodes. Dan, let's get right into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So first thing I want to do is we're going to go over the just a simple definition of what AI is. It's the creation of computer systems that can perform tasks typically requiring human intelligence, such as learning, problem solving, and decision making. AI systems analyze data to recognize patterns, adapt to new information, and execute tasks efficiently without human intervention, enabling them to act and think like humans to achieve specific goals. So now, first off, that sounds really cool at the base level, right? That's amazing. I guess what do you think is the coolest AI, I guess, feature or program that you personally enjoy the most? Because you said before we started the show, there's 20 different AI programs?
Yeah, there's 20 to 25, I would say, that are applicable as far as what you would consider AI. But first, before we get into that, I want to sort of tackle that definition a little bit in a couple of parts.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
So to boil it down, that's a really long definition. And like I said, we want to keep this sort of digestible for you guys and sort of boil it down. That's a lot of information in a very small package. So essentially, if I had to give a definition to AI, it is something that is replicating, I emphasize replicating human intelligence, but it's not human intelligence. Where I draw the line with AI in that definition is that we're talking about it being able to, basically, we're talking about a program or a feature or an application basically being able to tell you whether or not something is factual and you taking that as fact. So what I mean by that is if you're talking about an AI, a true AI, it should be indistinguishable from humans. That's what that definition basically gets down to, no matter what you point it to, what application you're using for it, whether it's coding, whether it's image generation, whether it's presentation notes, whatever you point it to, that definition is basically saying that it's indistinguishable, right? What we have to be very careful of with AI, and I use this all the time in my daily life as well as my career, because if anybody doesn't know, I'm an IT tech. That's what I do as a daily job. That's sort of like my day-to-day type stuff. So what I would say as a very quotable quote that I've come up with sort of myself is that you should be using AI as a tool, not as a dependency. Because where we get into a problem with AI is because when you start being dependent on it, we start regressing.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I know that they've been doing studies, even the short term. I mean, it feels like we woke up one day and boom, we got hit in the face with AI, right? It was just boom there. And the short term studies they've done is people who use ChatGPT and AI, their brain function has lowered.
Well, because it doesn't require as much functioning. You would probably look at a brain scan of somebody using AI for 6 months and somebody that hasn't used it at all. They would be vastly different.
It is. That's exactly what they did. Like what you said previously, there's a fine line between you shouldn't be relying on it, right? And there should be a finite difference between the AI and reality, I think is what you said.
Tackle that a little bit further, just to give it more of a definitive answer or definitive outlook.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that we can't rely on it. It needs to be a tool to get something done. So a really cool real world example, and we're old enough to remember these, is remember when you had, say, a summer reading project or something that you had to do for the summer, as far as like you
Mhm.
had to come up with what the book was about, what you felt about the book, like a book report essentially, right?
Yeah, 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 yep.
Encompassing the book as a whole and the characters and the setting and how it all tied in together and all that stuff.
Like Spark Notes, yeah.
My point. So I actually was going for Cliff Notes, but it's the same beast of a different color, right?
Mhm, mhm,
Think about AI in the application. Let's take note taking, for example. It's the same thing versus it's the same thing with paper as it was with a computer. Does the exact same thing. Where you get into trouble with AI in that application specifically is when you're dealing with information that's being pulled from whatever source it's being pulled, because that's essentially what like generative AI is. If you take the word generative, right, it's
mhm,
generating based on both what you tell it as well as what it's able to find based on the subject. So it's doing copious amounts of searches across search engines and databases and all sorts of crazy stuff, right?
mhm,
It's doing all of this simultaneously to bring that all into a very digestible, right?
mhm,
Digestible format like a cliff note, where it's literally the book from beginning to end. Here's what happened. Here's the important stuff, all that kind of stuff. So when you're talking about generative AI, you're essentially talking about, I mean, ChatGPT is good for a lot of stuff. That's probably the most prominent one that people know, that people use on a daily basis. I would
yeah,
also argue that a Gemini from Google is probably what a lot of people use. Even applications that have been around with AI that have been around for years, aka Siri, if you're an iPhone user.
mhm,
Siri is a form of AI. It is able to mimic a person. Okay.
yeah,
Now, AI could be responsible for sheerly conversating with you. That's all it has to do. But the generative AI versus like deep think and like deep learning AI, the real distinction between those two is one goes based off the information that you tell it, which would be your generative AI. It's going to generate information based on the information that it already has, right? So the more you
like,
talk to a generative AI, the more it's going to learn about you, the more extravagant and complex answers you're going to get and so forth, right? The deep learning version, which we haven't really tapped into yet, we have in certain applications in certain sectors like NASA, for example. I know that Cal Berkeley does a lot of stuff with that kind of thing.
yeah, I think BlackRock's doing that with the
Your
finance
Ivy,
and
your
stuff
Ivy
like
League
that.
institutions and that kind of stuff, like your Harvard, your Yales, your Cal Berkeley, your Oxford, all that kind of stuff. That is all stuff that they're sort of pushing the brink of what deep think and what deep learning AI is. So to
Okay,
make the distinction, just to go back to the original analogy of which is which and what they do, deep learning takes what you know or what you've told it and extrapolates it.
so it does its own research?
It does its own reasoning based on what you
Okay,
tell it. So, for example, there's like moral truths in the world, right? Right and wrong, good and bad, that kind of stuff.
right. Yeah, yeah,
It doesn't take into account necessarily what you think. It takes into categorization or in itself to not only take what you say, but like create an argument against it if you wanted. Do you get what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah, no,
So,
I get what
for
you're saying.
example, if you were doing generative AI, it would always agree with you. It would always tell you the best case scenario or the worst case scenario based on what you've told it. The deep learning essentially has its own reasoning. So if you think it's
Huh,
a good idea and it's just morally bad, it will tell you, dude, don't do that. You're
hmm,
you're you're thinking about it the wrong way. It's this way because of morals and that kind of thing. You get what I'm saying? So essentially, it's doing exactly what we wouldn't want it to do. Is it's not only learning from you, but it's learning from itself as you talk to it.
that's
Does that make
interesting.
sense?
Yeah, that
So
makes
just think
sense.
about it as a more intricate version of the exact same thing where it's mimicking another human being to the point where it has like a real deal relationship with you.
Yeah, it, like, actually tries to understand you.
Yeah, it mimics.
Yeah.
It mimics an actual
So,
person.
now here's the, like, AI art, okay?
Okay.
You had said earlier that, there should be, like, a clear distinction between what's real and what's AI.
Okay.
Well, it seems like with AI art, people want the opposite of that. They want it where you, like, can't even tell, and it's slowly getting there. It's slowly getting better and better, and at some point, I don't know if we're gonna be able to really tell the difference at some point. It's
Mhm.
like, think about how crazy the videos and pictures have already gotten with AI art,
Oh,
and it's only been a couple of years. I mean, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you're not going to know. It's going to be, unless they put caps on things, unless
Well,
they
that brings up
regulate.
an interesting point, and I want to touch on that for example, with AI art right now, it's very distinct. It's very distinct on what's real and what's not. We can tell what's fake, what's been auto-generated, that kind of thing. And with the not being able to distinguish, you start bringing in conversations about copyright. Where did the idea come from? What did you use to prompt something coming out of AI? Was it a quote? Was it a, because I mean, we've all heard of the term libel, right? Libel is basically somebody saying you said something you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the whole deep fake thing comes in, which is really interesting too. So if nobody knows about deep fake, if nobody on the podcast, I'm sure some of you know what it is, but just to break it down, essentially deep fake is a form of face cam where you can't distinguish the person that they're mimicking from their actual person. And it works with voice AI too.
Well, they were doing that with Trump Biden election.
They were doing it with Trump and Biden. I saw one about Tom Cruise. That was crazy.
Yeah.
But
they
that's what's going to
go ahead. Press conferences, the coaches' press conferences.
So think about this. Let's just take football, for example, because we're both football fans, right? Let me pose you a question. Let's say Mike McDaniel from the Dolphins, right?
Mm-hmm.
He tells management, today I don't really feel like going to the press conference. I'm tired. I just don't know if I have it in me today. I just, for whatever reason, doesn't want to go to the press conference and talk in person. They have a hologram as well as a deep fake of him, indistinguishable from Mike McDaniel. 2 questions. Should he still get reimbursed? Because I'm sure he gets paid for doing press conferences. I'm sure there's a clause in his contract that says he has to do press conferences or something to that effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Should he still get paid or his due process for the press conference?
I mean, you're technically using his likeness and image, right?
That's where it gets gray. It's not really
right.
him.
It's not him, but
it's his likeness.
Yeah.
Number
so
two, this is where it gets really crazy. Is he responsible, since it's his likeness, for whatever goes on in that press conference? Is he liable for it?
They'd have to say, I would say yes.
I would agree.
Right? If you're agreeing to use it,
you're responsible for what it's for, or somebody's responsible for what it's for, or what it's doing, or any kind of interaction, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So you get into, if we're talking about the deep learning, right? If we're talking about because the generative AI is just like writing a script for somebody. It's the exact same thing. Think about it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Where it becomes a problem with the deep learning is, what if it starts talking about stuff in Mike McDaniel's subconscious, what he's really thinking, not just what's coming out of his mouth.
Yeah, that's tricky. Because you got to be
so how far
there, right?
My point being with this whole conversation, making that distinction, is how far do you really want to go with it? Do you want to let it govern itself and it's just an extension of Mike McDaniel and it's on its own? Or do you want it to read from a script that somebody, his publicist, the publicist for the team, whatever, comes up with, and it's just responsible for the delivery? Which would you rather have? The other one, the deep learning sounds cool, but at the same time, you could get into some really hot water if you're taking the man's consciousness and God forbid it gets out of whack or goes rogue or whatever. Then you're in a real problem.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
So it's a script reading, and basically it's like a ventriloquist act. Think about it like that. That's what generative AI would be. Deep learning would be the other extreme, basically mimicking him, and he would be indistinguishable.
Okay. So what's your favorite program then? Like, what's your favorite one?
The one I've used the most is Chat GPT. I use it a lot for ideas in general. I would say the best application for Chat GPT that I've used is like what we're talking about, is the generative AI stuff. That's where it really shines. I've used it for image generation. The problem with the image generation version and the application of that specifically is that it's very generic. But again, you're dealing with the generative AI. You're dealing with something that will only learn and be better with what you tell it. So I think my favorite one for like a logistical and an analytical application would be ChatGPT. That's the one I use the most because it's good with analytical and logical data. That's where it really shines. So like coding, anything that's finite, science, math, that kind of stuff, where there's a definitive answer and a definitive way to do things and facts and all that kind of stuff. That's where it really shines. I think it's the most, I would say, without using a ton of them, I've used probably about 10 or so. ChatGPT would be my personal favorite. I just think it has the most application, and it's pretty good at doing pretty much anything. But like I said, the logistical and analytical stuff is where it really shines, where it's able to sort of extrapolate data that's based on fact.
Gotcha. So like how how much fun have you had with it? Like, have you asked it any, like, crazy questions or, like, what, like,
Uh,
you know?
I wouldn't say anything crazy because I do respect the platform. I've asked it some cool stuff. I've asked it sort of like, trying to think of an example off the top of my head. I know I've asked it about like job interviews and how I should like, I give it sort of the synopsis of what I'm going into, right? So like I have a job interview at this company at this time. It's for this position. How should I prepare? What questions should I ask during my interview? Something like that. And it does a really good job with, again, with that kind of stuff because it pulls from databases and that kind of thing.
Right.
When you give it
Yeah.
a more abstract idea, it sort of goes out of whack and doesn't really know what to do. So if you give it something
Mhm.
really generic versus finite, I think it does better in the finite realm versus the generic.
Yeah, I've also noticed playing around with it. I was using it a little bit for for the business that I owned, and then, playing around with it then, and then I kinda didn't use it as much, and I just recently for work started using it again. I've noticed you put in a thought or question or whatever, it will actually ask you for more information.
Correct. Yeah, that's the
So it's
prompt
like,
where it's like, I'm kind of stuck here. Can you help me out a little
mhm,
bit? That's the difference.
and then you can really narrow it, really,
Mhm.
really, really narrow it
But
down.
the
So
cool thing
it's
about
cool.
generative AI is that not only is it learning as you talk to it, but it will give you like suggestions to like help it
Yeah,
understand what you're talking about and give you like suggestions and like, hey, you sort of said you wanted it this way. You could do it like 3 or 4 different ways to see how you like it.
yeah,
And that's how it learns.
mhm,
Is not only is it giving you suggestions, but again, the other side of the coin, the deep learning would be like, hey, based on what we've sort of talked about before, it seems like you'd want to go this way.
yeah. I mean, I've used it before for with work as far as like competitors. I'll tell it like like one of our competitors, like what's their main like what's their best aspect, like what's their pros, what's their cons, what's their weaknesses as far as blah blah blah, and like I'll tell get it like information from the website, and it's unbelievable,
But like I said,
unbelievable.
generative AI is only as good as what you throw at it.
Hmm. It's
And
like
as
an
you throw in more
encyclopedia that just
information,
takes it.
as you throw more information at it too, it will just sort of like pin it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And go
yeah,
based off the
absolutely.
previous go off the previous information that you sold to it.
Pretty cool stuff. And I think like now we got to get a handle on it now because, and you can, let me know what you think, but like you can't just open the floodgates to it. You got to put some type of bar restrictions on it
I
as
was gonna
far
say I have
as,
a word for you, standard.
yeah, standard. Like you got to, but at the same time, could the AI not follow that if it doesn't want to? All right.
That gets you into the dangerous part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to believe that this thing's going to, as it progresses and gets more intricate and more adaptable and everything else, this thing's going to be thrown at pretty much anything because it makes things easier for that application. It's just the flat out fact of AI is that it makes things easier.
Yeah. I mean, I know like to kind of like go like how AI is making positive changes in our world, like healthcare. It's actually they're using AI to do early diagnosis of like cancers, and it's picking
Correct.
it up 3 to 5 years before it would regularly show up on whatever testing they did. So I mean, that's great. Would you trust an AI doctor though?
It's a good question, and it's sort of a multi-level question, if I could
Mm-hmm.
answer it that way.
Mm-hmm. I think it depends on like what kind of doctor are we talking about here?
Well, not only I was going to say, well, not only then what kind of doctor are we talking about, how invasive is this surgery?
I mean, I think just a doctor in general, to go to
So
a
you're talking
doctor,
about like a general checkup type shit.
like checkup or maybe a specialist, maybe like a foot specialist or
So like a
a back.
podiatrist or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, or like pain management. Would you
Uh,
trust an AI pain management doctor?
it would depend on how intricate the treatment was. So, for example, if we were just talking about, say, we're talking about a back, right? Let's just say back, for example. If we're just talking about physical movement and physical therapy, I'll take its word for it. Sure. If we're getting into the realm of like pain meds and medication, I would say right now with what we have, no, I would not be comfortable.
Because it can't understand pain, right?
Correct. That's where the deep thinking and all that kind of stuff comes into that realm. So if you're
And
looking
like
at, go ahead.
it's not going to have sympathy either, right? Like it's not going to care. It's going to say this textbook or whatever regulations say you shouldn't have this, or you're not, describing X. So the answer is no.
I would agree. But where the deep think comes into the deep thinking and that kind of stuff and deep thinking AI, where it gets dicey is that it could look at me, right? Because ultimately, with my care and my healthcare, it's technically up to me no matter what it could extrapolate something based on, like, let's say my brain waves. If it gets that far, where it's like, you don't really want to do this, but actually in the back of your mind, you're kind of into it. Do you see where the trickery can kind of happen with that?
Yeah.
Where you're second
Yeah,
guessing yourself
100%.
because this is an AI. This is not a human being. This is something that can literally come up with a thought in a microsecond and extrapolate that thought into something. Like I said, this episode's going to get rabbit hole-ish. So I apologize
Yes,
anybody
it
that
is.
doesn't like rabbit hole-ish conversations, but when you're talking about something that's going to literally change the way that we do everything in our lives, from every application, every sort of human interaction that you have, all of that stuff, it's all going to be applicable to that. Conversations, interviews. Like, imagine watching an interview with not two human beings, but two AIs interviewing each other.
They've done that already.
But like, imagine that is like the norm.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and
it gets crazy from the standpoint if you talk about that. Like, okay, so now the interviewee doesn't have a career, neither does the interviewer.
That's where the social income, the everybody's gonna have, everybody's gonna make X amount of money, and they're not gonna work. They're gonna be able to do pretty much whatever they want with universal income, and you know, you're gonna be happy not having a job, career, whatever. And I think as humans, that's going to be a downfall because we thrive on, first off, making things better. That's what we do. We evolve, we make things better. And we also have a sense of purpose.
You went
Get
exactly
up in
where
the
I was
morning
gonna. You're going exactly where I was going into. The
like,
operative word. The operative word is purpose or
yeah.
purposeful.
And how many people already deal with mental health issues of feeling like they don't have a purpose and they don't know where they're going in life, and life is already so hard because they're, playing video games or on a computer for work for 10 to 12 hours. And then, I mean, we're on our phones when we're not, you're on your phone. This thing's like, you're talking about, like, it's going to change the world as we know it in our lives forever. Well, that's what the internet did. And then when the iPhone came out, it's just the new iPhone. It's the new thing that's going to completely change everything. And yeah, there's a lot of pros to it, but there's also a lot of I think the big thing, and this isn't just with healthcare, this could go with education, this could go with a lot of things. It's the concerns are the trust and accountability, and then, like, patient privacy, just privacy in general, individual privacy. And I saw the other day, I think there's a state, it's either a state or a county, or it might not even be in the US, it might be in a foreign country. They're completely getting rid of judges. So they're using AI judges for, I guess, civil suits. That's what they're going to use. They're not going to use human judges. They're going to use simple AI judges in court.
Well, there is let's back it up a second as far as that's concerned. So if you're talking about that as far as civil, so we're not talking about capital murder, we're not talking about any of that. We're talking about somebody got a parking ticket, right? Something to that effect. You're not necessarily going to hurt anybody with that application of AI if it's doing what it's supposed to do, other than monetarily, for the most part. So, like, I guess think about
this. Is it good enough yet?
Yeah, right.
Is it
And
good enough yet?
that's my point. Is that we talked about a standard, right, or a code of ethics. Let's just call it that, because as a human, there's I would say generally agreed upon code of ethics that every human should live by. Right and wrong, good and bad. I should do this instead of this because this is bad. You know what I mean? Whatever that is, right? Whatever your personal code of ethics. But I think there's a generally agreed upon code of ethics of what's right and wrong. That's why we have laws that with every action, there's an opposite reaction, right? Like you do something bad, there's going to be a reaction to that bad thing. And most of the time it's punishment, right? There's also the flip side where everything you do that's good has a reward. Where it can get dicey, though, as you brought up an interesting point with the iPhone stuff. And I want to throw something kind of crazy at you that might make people's their foreheads kind of cringe. What if we become the old iPhone? It's a wild thought.
That is a wild thought.
What if robots get so tired of us, we're not the new and the best, and they start throwing people away, both literally and figuratively?
Yep.
And then the next iteration comes along and says, they're not good enough. Next
Well,
iteration
how
comes
about
along, they're not good enough. They're not good enough. They're not good enough. So you're just constantly just wasting away
how about
iterations of this
not
AI.
how about not only not good enough? Let's go with this one. Okay. What if AI looks at us because you know you're using AI for military, right? And weapons and stuff like that. They're definitely using it a little bit for that stuff.
Well, target, this is a wild thing, is people think
That
that AI has only been around for like the last 20, 30 years.
it's
Target
long.
lock, it's been around probably
Yeah.
since like the late 70s, 80s for like
Yeah.
military application. That's been around for 50 years.
Yeah. And
It's a
if you
form of
think
AI.
that
It's a form of artificial
yes.
intelligence based on generative AI. I pointed at something, it learns that it's bad,
Hmm.
and it locks on to that target.
I'll bet you the military slash government, like the black programs, they have AI that we can't even fathom.
But what you think we
And
have now is probably, I mean,
technologies.
I obviously don't know about it because it's obviously behind closed doors and this and that. But
We're like 80 years behind.
yeah, how much advanced technology does the government have that we know nothing about or that we shouldn't know
Right.
anything about because it's beyond our understanding? That's where it gets really
Hmm.
crazy.
And that's where we've talked about in other episodes where, did they get it from reverse engineering other technologies? Did they find something, somewhere? I don't know. Was it given to us as a donation? And that's a whole different rabbit hole to go down.
And
But to steer
I
kind of
think
back to,
yeah, the thing that I think is really cool, really interesting too is the like computers and technology takes a power source,
hmm
right?
yeah,
So as this thing gets more intricate and starts to learn more, it's going to require more power, more data centers, more whatever. What does that do to both the planet? How do we combat certain natural disasters from happening because we're consuming too much power at an accelerated rate? It also brings
well,
in not just environmental factors, but just power consumption in general. How much are we changing our planet, not just from an environmental standpoint, but from a cosmic standpoint?
and it goes to what I was saying earlier. What if AI, because with the military and whatever, how advanced that is, what if AI looks at us and it says humans are a threat to the planet? Humans are a threat to the existence of all life on this planet. Therefore, humans need to be eliminated.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the Terminator scenario now.
Essentially, yeah.
So essentially, people think the apocalypse is going to come by way of a natural disaster or something like that. What's really wild is if it becomes an extinction based on our own stupidness and foolishness, knowing not what we're fucking with. You talk
Do
about
you,
something that goes rogue that has no feeling of empathy. It's pretty scary. You
it's very
really think
scary.
about it. I deem you as wrong. No way to have a family. Nope, wrong.
Right. It doesn't care.
Doesn't empathize. Goes based on pure analytical data.
Did you see the hot water that the health insurance companies got in?
No, educate me.
They were using AI to determine if they were going to accept people's health insurance claims or not.
Do you know if it was
Like
generative AI or do you know if it was deep learning? Do you know?
that, I don't know. If you want to talk about like your
I was
thoughts
gonna
on
say
that, and I'll look it up.
that's where the conversation gets it forks, right? Because if you're talking about something that's just purely based on analytical data, which like I said, most of the law is pretty concrete and finite. There's stuff that you don't do and there's repercussions for that. It's an imperfect system, but generally speaking, if you do good, you get good. If you do bad, you get bad. Most of the time. Not saying all the time. But if you're talking about a purely analytical AI, I would technically agree with the insurance claim stuff because most insurance companies don't take empathy into it. They take,
So they're using generative AI. So it says Elevance, United Health Group, and Centene are actively adopting generative AI for various applications like contract management, speeding up software development, analyzing health data for care recommendations, and improving member experience through personalized communications.
so yeah, like I said, the analytical part doesn't bother me. If we're talking
But
purely,
what,
if we're talking purely numbers and taking emotion out of the equation, which with healthcare, I want an answer, a definitive answer of what's going on. I don't need you to beat around the bush.
but here's the problem. What if, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here. What if there's a decision that has to be made, and it's either save the life of a 83-year-old woman or a 5-year-old boy.
Okay.
And
What are the terms, I guess, is the question.
I like AI runs its numbers and it says that the older woman should be saved. It doesn't take in the empathy and the fact that this kid has his whole life in front of him. They just should that they should do this procedure for this woman based upon analytical numbers and not do the procedure. Not let's not. They're just not going to cover the insurance costs for the
Okay.
kid instead of the woman.
This might be a really weird answer for some people, but I would go based on the analytical data, based on, what the information says. It would also depend for me the type of surgery or type of procedure that needs to take place. Because with healthcare, especially, I mean, any procedure, let's talk about anesthesia, for example. Anytime anesthesia is put into the equation, there's a very small, if a chance at all, of you passing away on that operating table.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my one deterrent. If the person isn't able to either signal through their bodily function, because anesthesia, depending on what you use, has a lot of functions as far as what the body is able to do under anesthesia. I'm not a doctor, right? I don't have a medical degree. I'm just sort of spitballing here, but I would assume there's probably different types for different procedures. There's different types of anesthesia, and they apply to certain things that the body can or can't do.
Yeah. And
Like
somebody could have an
for
allergic
example,
reaction.
like a reflex, if that makes sense. There's probably a general type of anesthetic or something like that negates your reflexes.
Probably.
You get what I'm saying? So
So
that's where it can get dicey, is that like if it's a procedure that requires me to be, because some people even go into procedures and surgery under twilight, like they're still conscious. It's just like they're in a dream. They're still conscious. They're still aware of what's going on. They're just really drugged up.
Right. So the major health insurance companies, United Healthcare, Cigna, and Humana, they have faced lawsuits for using artificial intelligence and algorithms to wrongfully deny claims. While the insurers state these tools are used to process claims efficiently, lawsuits and investigations have found the technology was used to deny care and cut costs, often overriding the judgment of human doctors.
So what I would say to that, and that's a really good point about rejections specifically, because nobody wants to be rejected for an insurance claim. Then they have to pay out of pocket, and then it just gets into a big mess.
It happened to me.
Right. And
recently from my neck and back pain.
Yeah. So paying out of pocket would obviously, for anything, whether it's medication or a procedure or just a general checkup, for example, would go through the roof. But it circles back to the standard that we'd have to have. For certain applications of certain AI for, let's say, healthcare, since we're on that tip, just like HIPAA, there would need to be rules and regulations on who's generating the information, who's writing the code, who's monitoring it. All of that would have to be done through certifications and all that stuff for me to be comfortable. If they're just having their own in-house reps writing this code or getting it from a third-party vendor without verifying whether it was really doing what it's supposed to be doing, I'd have a very big problem with that.
So, how do you monitor that, though?
That's the real question, though, right? Is not only are we going to be using it for this type of stuff, but the morality and the justification and the verification, who's responsible for it? Because depending on, let's say United Healthcare, for example, comes up with their own AI program. You don't think Universal Healthcare or United Healthcare
they're all going to do it.
Is going to want to use that for profit? Wow. It sounds to me that through the lawsuits and what people have brought up with this pertaining to this, it sounds like that's exactly what they're doing. Because if you're going to deny somebody a claim, that's the insurance company pocketing, or not pocketing, I would say not even giving up the money in the first place.
I think it's wild to me that a doctor says this person needs this, and then an insurance company goes, no.
Yeah, it's all based on information. It's all based on statistics. It's based on the bottom line. It's based on all that stuff.
And I think that's so wrong.
I do too.
That's so fucked up and wrong.
But then you also, again, rabbit hole. Person has schizophrenia. Person has, let's say, manic depressive. Do the statistics play into what care they deserve or need? Or is it based on the person and their personality, which is what it is currently, most of the time. So to sort of give a real world example. So I'm in a therapist's office, right? One scenario I'm with AI, one scenario I'm with a real human being. Depending on the AI that you choose, it's going to go give you medication and a prognosis or a diagnosis based on what it knows and what has worked in the past. A human being right now, if you're not talking about deep think AI, will actually learn about you as a person if they're a good therapist, if they know what they're doing. They will be able to get to the root of the problem and then base that off of what medication they end up doing or treatment or whatever. Because that's the other thing is that that's the other really scary thing is that not all ailments require medication. They require rest, they require sleep, they require a lot of
I
things.
would say most. Honestly, you want to go down another rabbit hole with this shit. Big pharma doesn't want to cure anybody
Well, yeah, because if
because
you cure it, they stop making money.
they don't have a customer. And that's what, that's why Rockefeller created Chicago School of Medicine. And a lot of medicines were holistic. He completely told all the colleges and medical institutes, no, you're getting rid of holistic medicine because we're going to make money. What we're going to do is we're going to rewrite the books and we're going to make everything. And we're going to treat people because if you treat, you have a recurring customer. He didn't call them patients. He called them fucking customers. That's how fucking fucked up and greedy this guy was. Him and all those other assholes back then. But I would say I see a therapist. I see a therapist once a month. It's decent. I think most of the medicine that people are on do more harm than good. It doesn't actually fix you. I think it turns most people into zombies. And I think it gives them more problems than if they worked out regularly, change their diet, get sunlight, and surround themselves around positive people and influences. Now, if you got schizophrenia or whatever, there's my uncle Tommy.
Yeah.
Okay, he was a child therapist for 30 something years, almost 40 years.
Who
He
we
got
also
his
want to have on this motherfucker.
We do at some point. He got his bachelor's and master's from UCLA. He was in Vietnam, and then when him and Dad got out of Vietnam, they both moved to California. He was at UCLA, got his bachelor's and master's there, and then he got his doctorate at Cleveland State. He was in psychology, and I forget the name of this doctor. I'll look it up at some point here, but there was a patient, a woman. She, I believe, was in a car accident or something happened and she thought she was on the moon
It's a
and
wild take.
she was in the whole insane asylum and she was convinced that she was on the moon and everyone said that there's no cure for her, she's going to be stuck there forever. She was in her 20s, I think. And this doctor, and again I'll get his name, but this doctor did an experiment and he said she thinks she's on the moon, right? Well, you got to go to the moon and you got to get her and you got to bring her back to Earth. And Blake, they prepped for 2 weeks. He would tell her, all right, on this date, I'm going to be coming to the moon to come get you. And we're making preparations and blah, blah, blah. And eventually he went to the moon and he hung out with her and then they got in the ship and they came back to Earth. Did you know that she left the insane asylum and she went and had a family, was completely cured? Lived a great life, no medicine, nothing.
So essentially, he just accepted her reality and that sort of snapped her back. Is that sort of what I'm getting from that story?
Yes. He said in her reality, she's there. Now, AI couldn't have done that. I don't think.
True. Well, that's where the deep thinking thing comes with, where it starts to reason and oppose empathy and all that kind of stuff. So it depends on what you're talking about. It really does. It depends on which version you're talking about. But yeah, that's actually kind of wild. I mean,
I gotta find that.
Let me ask you a question about that scenario. So, right now, if she were alive, she'd still think she was on the moon, or she'd completely back to reality and everything's hunky dory?
No, she's back to reality. She had a family, great happy life.
It's interesting. It's almost like snapping somebody out of a dream or something. It's what it sounds like.
Right. Very interesting. But
it's almost. I mean, that almost sounds like some hypnosis. Kind of.
Well, my uncle, so I don't know if you know this, Tommy used to do seminars, big gatherings of 1,000 people would go and he would hypnotize them to quit smoking. He cured tens of thousands of people.
Really?
Yes. Yep.
It's pretty impressive.
He did it for years. So yeah, I mean, hopefully we can get Tommy on here if he's willing to do it. I haven't talked to him about it yet, but it would be cool to get him on here. To go back to more of, what we were talking about, I guess, healthcare, we've talked about that. Education, I know professors are getting upset because kids are just doing reports through ChatGPT and they're not actually putting in the work, and they're not, like, kids are going to be kids. They're always going to try to find a shortcut, right? That's like just, it's what they do.
What was the best source in the world when we were in school? Think about it.
Google?
Google, Wikipedia.
Yeah. Well, Wikipedia, and we
How
weren't
many
even allowed to
times did
use it.
people now? You know what's really crazy is
You're
now
You're encouraged to use Wikipedia.
when Wikipedia first came out,
Yeah,
it was no-node.
Yeah, we were like, all of our professors were like, yeah, if you get caught using Wikipedia,
it's not a factual source.
Yeah.
It's able to be edited and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
And now
We're taking Wikipedia as gospel,
mhm,
and that's where the information,
absolutely.
and that's where the misinformation and all that kind of shit starts. On that tip, as far as education is concerned, you have to worry.
Should schools use it, or should they embrace it, or should they ban it? Because like over in China, they're embracing that shit. Other countries are embracing
I think it's
it.
good. I think it's good in certain instances, but again, it comes back to the standard.
Okay.
We have to have an agreed upon set of rules, regulations, engineers that are responsible for how this stuff works. And it's an agreed upon group of engineers. Like, for example, think about it in another way. Who do we turn to for the laws that govern America? We turn to a group of individuals that none of us know personally, and they make the rules. Everybody seems to be, for the most part, okay with that. But when it starts governing your life and how you live your life and what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do, people have their own opinions about that. So that's where the lawsuits come from, right? I don't agree. Let's take the insurance company thing, for example. I don't agree with this analysis, but it's found on fact. Yeah, but I don't agree. It's my life. It creates a lot of problems.
Yeah.
You're going to deal with, no matter what it is in life, there's always somebody that's going to have a problem with how it works. Always. So when you're dealing with healthcare or policing, these big issues that we're facing and all that kind of stuff, do you want that out of human hands? And if it's out of human hands, who is responsible for the governing principles that make this thing work? So you'd have to treat it like another form of government. In a roundabout way, there is going to be people that are responsible for this technology that you've neither met, know from anything other than, newspapers or interviews or whatever. So you think about it like a Senate or a House of Representatives or something like that. Are people going to be comfortable with that? That's the real question.
And can those people sway it to fit a narrative? Can they manipulate it?
Correct.
Can they? Because
you already brought up, it sounds like through what you presented with the insurance companies, that not only are they manipulating it, but they're manipulating it in a malicious way where they're making money and cutting other people, deserving people, from getting insurance to pay for the procedures that they quote unquote need.
And then you get into the politics. It
gets real dicey real quick.
Real dicey, because there was I saw a video on, I forget what podcast it was. They actually shared the screen and they put it in ChatGPT. And they said, create an outline for a right-wing Republican podcast show. Yeah. And it said that it couldn't do that because of safety regulations and all sorts of shit. And then they changed it to create a podcast for a left-wing Democratic podcast. And it came out with a whole outline. Yeah,
because it's generative. So it's going to take what it learned from the Republican side, put it against the leftist side, and it's going to tell you, generative AI, if we're talking about statistics, it's going to take into account how many Republicans or how many Democrats have been elected to office, what they did, how efficient they were. All of that stuff's going to be taken into account.
But this thing blocked. It said it wasn't allowed to come up with a right-wing podcast.
What
I think it was ChatGPT.
So it's generative.
It was generative.
Sort of.
So whoever created it,
sounds like they were the other side of the table.
Right.
Yeah, that's the contradiction.
And
that's where the contradiction comes in. That's what I'm talking about, is that how deep.
And it would be fucked up if it was reversed. If it wouldn't come up with
100%. You'd have Democrats mad at Republicans and vice versa. It'd be chaos. Yeah, it gets
Yeah.
real crazy if you really dig down deep into it and really realize how dividing it can be. It get like I said, I use the word dicey, but it can get really dangerous real quick. It can change a lot of opinions where we're not thinking for ourselves anymore. We're using AI to come up with our thinking. That's where you get into real
Yeah.
trouble, is because it's, God forbid, it goes rogue, and people could lose their livelihood. They could lose their
Oh,
possession, all
everything.
sorts of crazy shit. It gets real crazy.
Yeah. I just we gotta get a handle on it, and I don't know how you do that. Realistically, how you do that without I don't know. I don't trust most people. That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's neither good nor bad. It's just I like to put a lot of stock into myself when I come up with things or answers to problems and stuff like that. I'll always ask for advice because that's human nature. We want verification that we're doing the right thing. That's just human nature.
Mhm.
But you don't want to get to something that's always going to agree with you, and also something that's not going to always disagree with you. You'd rather have a intelligent conversation and bounce ideas and all that kind of stuff that we do as humans. And that's where the deep learning stuff comes in, is
Yeah.
that you won't be able to distinct. And this is the other thing. I know I brought it up off air, but I really want to get into it because I know we're coming up on an hour. But like I said before we went on air that this could be like a 3
I
or 4
mean,
hour podcast
we
for me.
yeah, I mean, we can,
Um,
if we go a little over, we go a
yeah,
little
that's
over.
fine. That's fine.
Okay.
But the thing I talked to you about a couple of weeks ago, or it might even be going back, like really far back. So I know you and I talked about Alan Turing. Do you remember that conversation?
Yes.
Okay. So the fundamental test for AI and whether or not it's effective and capable of doing what it's supposed to be doing was developed by a man called Alan Turing. He was a mathematician that came up with a test called the Turing test. So anybody that doesn't know what the Turing test is, the Turing test essentially is a pass-fail test. It's very definitive. It's one or the other. There's no gray area. It's either a yes or a no. And the whole point of the test, essentially, is to basically figure out whether you're talking to an AI or you're talking to a real human being. And I can look up what the pass-fail is. So let me look that up real quick because I'm blanking on it real quick. So pass and fail Turing test. I forget which one is which. So a machine, here's the Google definition of the pass-fail. So a machine passes the Turing test if a human judge cannot distinguish its responses from those of a human during a text-based conversation. It fails if the judge can reliably identify it as a machine. However, the concept of a clear pass-fail is complicated by varying test conditions. Debate over what constitutes genuine intelligence and the demonstrated ability of modern AI to convincingly mimic human conversations. So, essentially, if a machine passes that test, you can't tell the difference. That's the deep think.
Okay.
If you can, it will go based on a pattern. It's like pattern recognition by a human being. That's how it fails. So the reason why this is interesting is because he created a massive Enigma machine. I think it was World War I. It might have been World War II. I'd have to fact check that, but it was one of the two. The application was used for Nazi code breaking by the British.
That's interesting.
So they spoke in code. Essentially, through the code, this Enigma machine was able to extrapolate what they were really talking about, even though it was coded. So the reason I bring that up is it brings another really interesting point into the view. Think about if this was used by black hats. No matter what you do to your information, put it behind 2FA, two-factor authentication, put it behind a password, biometrics, which would be like your fingerprint, your face, that kind of stuff. Think if it was able to break that routinely. I'm not talking once or twice. I'm not talking something that looks like it. I'm talking real deal fingerprint, DNA, everything. Think about the flood of information, personal PII information that would be flooded to the masses. Think about public record on steroids.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking your blood type, your entire family lineage, everything. It's like and this is a really cool idea because we brought it up in the last episode. Think about it as a Pandora's box.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really want to open that? Because all points and signs are telling you, again, don't get ahead of yourself.
Well, so as far as that goes, because I mean, like, there's always going to be hackers and bad people, right? What do you think of Elon Musk's Neuralink?
Is that the chipping stuff that's going
That's
on?
that's the chip for he's having for people who have like special like amputees and like stuff like that, and like
So
people
essentially,
who
people that are disabled,
can't,
whether it's mentally or physically.
more physical right now. Yeah,
Yeah, I would
he
say
eventually
that was
wants everybody to have it
okay. I
because
would say that's a
run
go
his
ahead.
computer just looking. This dude could run his computer just looking at it and thinking.
Well, they actually do that right now. It's called eye tracking software. It's on
Hmm.
pretty much any operating system that you could. I mean, it's mostly for like civilian application, but you can use an eye tracker on Windows, and it
But
will literally let
this
you like look around the screen and click on stuff. And if you blink, it'll do something. If you like, blink twice, it'll do something else. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff.
But this kid, literally, he was the first human being to get it. All he had to do was think, like search Google for this, and it went and did it.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, so essentially, you're talking about like multitasking. You're not just talking about one thing.
He didn't have to use like any of his extremities. It's just in his brain. Could pull it up.
I think that's a case by case basis, in my personal opinion. Because then you're talking about a monopoly of one company or one creator or one entity controlling it all. That's monopolizing. Monopolizing is, for some people, it's good. For some people, it's bad. I personally think a monopoly on any kind of thing we use is probably there's not a right way to do something in totalitarian. I think there's many
I,
different views on the way things can work. But
I
to combat that, there's also a right and wrong, a good and bad, and all that kind of stuff. So where do we draw the line? Is it moral? Is it morals, or do we do it based on just the data? Are you empathizing with the situation, or are you going purely based on fact? That's where's the dividing line. You get what I'm saying?
yep. I mean, I think I don't know, I think there's enough, like, if you study history, it's why I love history. You learn from your past, and hopefully you can prevent from making the same mistake over and over again. Like, there's a reason why they got rid of Standard Oil,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Because
because it wasn't as
Rockefeller
efficient
just
as what we
was,
have now. Correct.
well, he was buying the competition and just raising the price. He was killing people, so he would buy up the small companies, all his competitors, or bully them out, and he could make it super high price, and then the quality went down, right? Look at what you and I talk about this all the time. Look at Madden. Zero competition. They've been so lazy. They don't care. They're gonna do their Madden Ultimate Team
Where they
because
make the
people are
where they
dumb enough to care about that and give them the money, and yet the gameplay is horrible. If there was a 2K came back or another company, you'd have competition, and then they would have to create a better game.
or be on par with what the other company's creating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good example, and just for that example, we look at something like CFB that came back within the last 2 years. You look at that game, and it's so much more of a simulation of actual college football and football in general. Where Madden just feels like a simulation, like it's not realistic, like from everything, from like you told me, and I can see it in the gameplay and the way the game runs. I mean, like they took the time to go to every college stadium that's in the game, and it literally looks like the stadium from the school.
Yeah.
That's just one example. Then you also have like the
walkout.
The walkout. Then you have like the celebrations. They're based on the team sometimes, and not necessarily just a generic model of a character celebrating. You know what I mean? Like sometimes they'll celebrate with the mascot, or they'll celebrate.
They do the Gator
right,
chant
like all that
Florida,
kind of stuff. Like all the crowd reactions are authentic. All of that kind of stuff. So I agree with you. Just in that application alone, I think the competition would be. It would not only be beneficial, but I think it would drive. It would drive stuff forward. It would progress things to a point where like competition is a good thing. In my personal opinion, competition is the only way for us to push forward. If we're not being challenged, if we're not being put to the test, if we're any of that stuff, you're resting on your laurels. And me personally, from a personal point of view, I don't do that. I'm constantly trying to better myself. I'm constantly trying to find out more information. If you're not progressing, you're stagnant. And who wants like that doesn't compute to me. No pun intended. It just doesn't. It goes against the grain of how we are as human beings. And if we get something like a tool like AI that literally will be able to do everything for us,
that goes back to
where do we go as a species?
That goes back to self-worth.
Yeah, like we have the whole reason that people live is they have something to get up for every day, no matter what that is. That like we have to. as human beings, we have to have a driving force.
Mm-hmm.
And certain human
Absolutely.
beings necessarily don't see that. And that's why you have all the mental illness and all that kind of stuff, is they don't see the self-worth. Going back to what you said earlier, I actually think that would be detrimental to people with mental illness. It would make it worse.
Mm-hmm.
You're taking not only a person's drive to do something, but they don't have the drive in the first place. So not only are you taking it away, you're actually doubling down on that fact and not letting them have the drive at all. So that's where it becomes dangerous, is that there's no I mean, it gets kind of dark. What reason is there for me being here?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like it could get real detrimental real fucking quick, like real quick.
Yeah. People would start questioning, why are they here? And then the AI would
people
say,
already do that. That's the wildest part. People already question that fact. That's the craziest part about it. Mm-hmm. It's already happening. So you want to take something and put it into the realm of human existence, and then on top of the fact that they already are depressed, and because some people have clinical depression where they're born with it. It's based on their genetic makeup.
Yeah. Yep.
That's just a fact. It's been scientifically proven that, the way somebody is built, and that's what makes us unique, is not every human we're all snowflakes. We're all unique. Not one snowflake is the same. It just doesn't exist. Right. It's not a thing. So when you take the uniqueness out, and then we're just mass producing robots and AI, like with the way mass production is these days, imagine this. Let's take a food company, for example, right? Not to harp on Kraft macaroni and cheese, because I eat it all the time. I love Kraft macaroni and cheese. It's one of my favorite, go-to meals if I'm into something quick.
Can we call that real food?
Yeah, exactly. It's real food. If we take the idea of a Kraft mac and cheese plant that pumps out millions upon millions upon millions of boxes a day, put AI in that equation, we're going to be fucking outnumbered.
Oh, yeah.
So if somebody was malicious, let's just say, and that brings into 3D printing and all that kind of stuff too. Imagine being able to mass produce weapons. I'm not talking about guns. I'm talking about nuclear weapons. The bad is just as good as the good, man, and maybe even worse.
I think it's worse.
It can go one of two ways. It's either going to be peaceful or it's going to be an absolute shit show.
Well, how about you've heard of the bot farms, right?
It sounds familiar.
So there are these huge warehouse facilities, and all these countries are doing it. Like China does it, Russia does it, the US does it, fucking all of them. They have these farms, and they're hundreds of thousands of cell phones they create fake social media accounts. So there's not an exact number, but it could be over 60% of social media accounts could be bots.
Actually, doesn't seem like that insane of a number, to be totally honest with you, given
how
much experience I have with social media and promoting YouTube and all that kind of shit. That doesn't surprise me at all.
They said about 80% of the accounts on X are bots. Here's what's scary is there's a 8 out of 10 chance that if you get into an argument with somebody on Facebook or X or whatever, you're not arguing a real person. You're arguing a bot. These bots are also creating conflicts and arguments and all sorts of hashtag whatever, these movements, and companies and governments are making decisions based upon social media.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, because essentially, if you're talking about a bot, you're talking about a robot. You're talking about something that's not human and doesn't,
But they're using AI.
Correct. You see how crazy it can get with swaying opinions?
And they're creating more accounts, and they're creating their own group pages, and they're creating their own hashtags. So
I guess my overall question is, once we start, are we going to be able to stop? That's the really dangerous. No. That's the really dangerous question. Is how far are we actually going to take this?
I think
that answer is really scary.
I think the answer is it's not going to stop.
Are we just going to drive this thing so far that we're just going to lose control of it? Yeah, that's the question that you really have to answer, is that, and that's where the standards, that's where the updates, that's where all of the laws come into place and all that kind of stuff. There needs to be some form of, regulation that says, no, that's not what it's for. That's not what we built it for. You're using it out of context, whatever the case is, right? But my question to everybody would be, do you treat it like, a House of Representatives or a Senate or something like that, where you have a governing body of let's call it 20 individuals that sway the vote, because we're quote unquote a democratic society, right? We govern based on majority most of the time. And we would like to think it's mostly a moral majority, but take that how you want it. Take it how you want it. It's up for, everybody's different. Everybody has their own opinions, all that kind of stuff. And I'm respectful of that. But at the same time, you have to have some kind of like definitive answer, no matter what the context is. And that's where there needs to be some form of structure to how this is handled. And right now, it's kind of a Wild West.
Yeah, but even like with deepthink, I know that they have done experiments with deepthink, and the AI, when it actually learned that they were going to shut it down, it started to make copies of itself and hide files, and it would lie to the creator.
Yeah. I mean, you're messing with something. I'm telling you, dude, this is where it gets crazy, is because you're messing with something that has the ability it has recognition. It has empathy. It has all of the tools to mimic human behavior. Not just human behavior, but the physical presence of a person.
So there is no putting a top on it, and you can't, even if you have people who monitor it, it's eventually gonna us.
If you're talking about deep thinking, yes.
Yes. It's eventually gonna get smarter than us. And it's not gonna matter how many firewalls we got. It's not going to matter how many backup systems, how many self-destructs we have. It's going to take control.
It's going to integrate itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be the spider web nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
We joke about South Park all the time, but I mean, like the episode where Cartman becomes a supercomputer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that far-fetched of an idea.
Well, not to go down the whole other rabbit hole that I always love to go down, but, a lot of ancient astronaut theory, some of those alien species that are part of the Galactic Council, they're literally AI. Like what we're talking about right now, they say has already happened to other. I mean, think about it. If a civilization is 1,000,000 years ahead of where we are right now, and they've gotten rid of emotion, and they've integrated with like the Neuralink thing.
Yeah,
so they don't have to.
What you're talking about now is brain control. Not that far fetched.
No,
you're talking about an implant that's in somebody's probably their brain stem or their cortex, whatever controls that. Again, because I'm not a doctor. I wouldn't know what it would point to specifically to control you. And it also brings up the question: what do you consider control? Are we talking about just your physical body? Are we talking about your mind and your physical body? Just your mind? It begs a lot of questions. So, I mean, the conversation alone, people have staked their reputation on this shit. People have gotten careers just on studying it. Imagine what we'd have to pay people 24/7, let's call it 24/7, to keep this shit up to date.
I think it's almost impossible.
Yeah. It changes everything. It really does. It changes it from a monetary standpoint. It changes it from an empathetic standpoint. I mean, insert word here for human beings' existence. It's going to change everything. And the real question is, are we ready for it? Because if we're not, I don't know, man. I really don't.
So do you think, I mean, we've done some crazy episodes on here. Do you think it's realistic that we could have already been in this situation 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 years ago, and we keep doing the same goddamn thing over and over again? Eventually we hit a certain level, and then we get so technological that we self-destruct and kill ourselves, basically.
I think it's going to get to a point. Yeah, I think the over sophistication of what we're talking about is going to get to a point where we can't handle it.
Do you think that's happened in the past?
To a certain degree.
With certain things to a
certain
we can't
degree.
Explain?
Yeah. I do. But it also depends on where you're getting ahead of yourself, right? So like if you're, let's just take war, for example. If you're not as equipped as the enemy, you're probably going to get capped. Let's just use the reasoning. Unless something really miraculous happens, vast majority of the time, if you're undermanned, understaffed, undermanned and understaffed, the same thing. Under-equipped, 99 times out of 100, you're going down more than likely.
Mm-hmm.
But you're dealing, if we're taking AI into account in this argument, if it's able to extrapolate what we already have and then look into the future to create more, we're talking about the same thing. There's advances within, again, war that have changed everything about how it's conducted, who has a dog in the fight as far as that's concerned. If, like, let's take the atomic bomb, for example. We talked about that a couple of days ago off air. That changed everything about how you conduct yourself. I mean, you took an energy from a molecular and atomic level and extrapolated into something that could destroy.
And the universe feels that because for every action, there's a reaction.
Correct. It's why when an atomic bomb explodes, if you really watch the way it explodes, it turns in on itself. It's the mushroom cloud, right? So we have, again, it comes back to the energy consumption. It comes back to, the resources we have to put into AI to keep it functioning. Is it really, we have to ask ourselves as human beings, and as we go forward into time, is it worth it? Because we're going to have to put a lot of manpower into this thing if we want it to be even remotely what we think it can be, and then further beyond that. And the other question, when we get to that place where we're on the brink of it being smarter than us, do we shut it off?
Can we shut it off?
Exactly. But there's going to come a definitive point where somebody's going to see something like, oh, dude, here it comes. Are we going to be equipped, and are we going to have the reasoning to shut it off and not test the envelope? That's why I bring up the Pandora's box thing. We're looking at the box right now. We're staring at it.
How close do you think we are?
I don't think
that,
honestly,
from being like
within the next
that point of like
of the no return thing.
Decade?
I would say a decade is probably a little close. I would say if we keep going the way we are, I wouldn't say a quarter of a century is a stretch. 25 years would probably do it for me, depending on what we come up with and how far we want to take it.
Do you think this is more dangerous than the atomic bomb?
Potentially. With the atomic bomb, you at least had to detonate the thing. It still required human interaction. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that totally makes sense.
So here's a wild scenario for you. We're going to do the exact same thing, but a human being's not pushing the button. Trust that? Or they're not necessarily pushing it, but has the decision to push it. Trust and goes that. Based off its own logic and everything that it's learned and what it's able to do and all that kind of stuff. Do you trust that? If an AI bot comes in and says, hey, we have this country that's wanting to invade us, the only way out is that. That's your scenario. Imagine the pickle you'd be in if it went wrong, if it was wrong.
Well, if it was wrong, but also, I mean, if you have it, the other side is going to have it.
So where does it stop? It doesn't. That's the thing I think that I'm worried about the most is when the military gets a hold of this, no matter what military it is, are they going to have
a hold of it?
They
already have.
I know, but what I'm saying is if they decide to use it in a malicious fashion, which I'm sure they've done, I'm sure it's been done before, but has it been done on the level of, it's called an apocalypse?
Yeah. What worries me is the government using this and like their black projects and like CIA, because the CIA loves to just work a lot of illegal stuff, right? Who in the black market's going to get their hands on this, and like terrorist organizations and stuff like that?
But I think the cool thing about this is that it's going to be one of two extremes. It's either going to be really good or really bad. I don't see a gray area with this thing.
Yeah, I don't see a gray area. It's going to be an extreme.
It's good. It is a. We're going to look back at this when you and I are like 70 years old and be like, yeah, I remember when that started. It's going to be one of those defining things of human existence, man. It really is.
If we make it to 70, I honestly think we're going to look like Mars.
Well, like I said, I mean, it's just really, it's going to be not even 10 years down the road. We could be having the exact same conversation and look outside and it's like, well, this is it.
We could be living in a cave.
Yep. It's gonna revert us back to survival and our primal instinct to want to stay alive. It's gonna get real messy.
Maybe
if it goes bad, it's gonna get real messy.
Maybe that's what happened to our ancestors.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows?
Yeah,
who knows what happened?
We got to be careful with it. And that's why I always tell people when they ask me what I think about AI, my general response is use it as a tool. Don't use it as a dependency. Because when you start depending on it, you're unable to think for yourself. And us as human beings is sort of our moniker. We're able to, as far as we know, think for ourselves and have free will and all that kind of stuff.
Do you think deep things should be banned?
Are we talking the universal ban?
For the better
Complicated question, but with all the negatives, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
If I'd have to see a lot more evidence of it being used for good and actually applying in a productive fashion to turn that cheek. Because there's a
I,
lot of
I,
there's a
I,
lot of good and bad to it, but when it gets bad, it gets really bad.
I think the problem that we as humans have, especially when it comes to the tech industry and medical industry and military, is we don't think about just because we can do this, should we do this? We just do it and we worry about the consequences later. And I think that has really had a lot of it's brought a lot of negative things that we're dealing with, like with mental health and just society in general. I think as a collective, if you are a pretty decently moral human being, even if you're not a moral human being, I would say most people, if they could go back in time and stop Zuckerberg and those guys from creating social media, I think a lot of people would say, you know what, don't create it, rather not have it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we already have a dependency in place for certain things like this, and social media would be an example. I think that a lot of people, we have factual, quote unquote, big air quotes. We have factual information circulating the globe faster than it's ever circulated before. And unfortunately, social media has become a way of getting information, whether it's good, bad, and different, doesn't matter. It's information.
Yeah, and I don't think we were meant to be connected to everybody. We weren't meant to hear everybody's opinions. And I mean, think about like since social media has been created, you know how high suicide rates are in youth?
Well, yeah, because you're doing it behind a wall.
And you can't get away from it. These kids are addicted to it. You and I would go to school, and if there was a couple kids bullying you or causing, drama, you left school unless you got on AIM and sat at your computer for hours. You were away from it.
For the most part, I would agree with that.
Now, you're there. These kids can't put it down. They can't.
Well, it's become a form of addiction.
It is 100% addiction.
There's been scientific studies that people are addicted to their phones. That's not a secret. That's not something that's. I mean, if you're going to turn away from that fact and call it, a hoax or you're just fooling yourself. It's 100% a form of addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's so readily available, what do we do as human beings in every context of our existence? We consume. And now the information is so readily available, people are getting full off it. Who doesn't like to be full of information? Who doesn't like to be full? All that kind of stuff ties into it. And what you're talking about with the bots and everything, when you talk about swaying opinion and putting out, let's say, false information, whatever the context is, whether it's government, whether it's healthcare, whatever, people have become so codependent on the internet and what is posted on the internet that sometimes they take that as gospel. They'll take they'll take a 10-second TikTok clip out of context and use it to ruin somebody's life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they'll clip it.
Yeah.
You don't get the whole thing.
You don't get the whole conversation. You only get a snippet, and it's something that's taken completely out of context based on what they were talking about, what the overall topic or what the topic that they're touching on is, and use it for either a malicious or a benevolent reason or application rather. Yeah, I agree with you. I think social media has become quite detrimental. Because we're so fixated on the fact that it's readily available. We get a chemical reaction from it in our brains. It's the same thing as smoking or drinking or doing drugs, anything like that. You get the dopamine kick. And like I said, just like with brain scans that we were talking about earlier, you can take a look at somebody that doesn't have a social media platform. They don't use social media. They're never on their phones. Their brain scans, I guarantee you, as opposed to somebody that's on Facebook, on Twitter, or X rather, they're drastically different, guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much probably more brainwave activity in somebody that's not doing that, because how many times, I mean, I'm guilty of it. I'm sure a lot of people that listen to the podcast are guilty of it. How many times have you gone on YouTube just as background or TV shows for that example? We talk about all the time how, when we put on like South Park when we go to bed, right? Whenever we're hanging out or whatever like that, or a movie. No, subconsciously, it's still making its way into your brain. Because I will tell you that watching like Family Guy or something like that, or South Park or a movie or something, if I can hear it in some form or fashion, it doesn't happen all the time, but there are some times where I will dream based on I will dream something based on the dialogue that I can hear. It will be in there somewhere, and I'll wake up and be like, "Oh, that was a quote from Family Guy. That's kind of weird." I do it all the time.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I do that too.
I mean,
I do that too.
You're talking about the Neuralink stuff. Imagine if somebody got a hold of that maliciously and implanted stuff that literally warped your perception of everything about you being on this earth.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Like
Absolutely.
you implant somebody with the behavior of a cow, for example. Next thing you know, they're standing in a field mooing.
That's messed up.
It's fucking wild, dude. That's exactly what I'm talking about, is that application from what that is. If it's an implantation in your cerebral cortex or your brainstem, somebody has full sway over what you do, period.
Yeah, it's scary. I don't trust it.
It's the way we're built. And they're implanting into something that has full sway over what you do both physically and mentally. That's why I think it's somewhat dangerous.
Yeah.
Because if you're monopolizing it, you're talking about the same thing that you're scared of. How do we regulate it if it's controlled by one entity? It's a crazy conversation, and it's scary, because if we don't use it the right way, it's gonna get real bad real quick.
Dude, think about how quick your algorithm on Instagram or Facebook, you're watching reels, can go from one thing to just like real dark crazy shit.
Well, not even that, but think about this. Have you ever been talking about something, your phone's off, TV's off,
Yes.
and then all of a sudden, a week later, it pops up, something about it? That's not by accident, dude. That's not by accident.
Not even a week. I have had not even me talk about it or type it in my phone. I have had where I didn't know about this thing, and I saw it, like it was like a thought or something, and it popped up on my phone under advertisements. Thought about it.
Or it goes based on recommendation, which is exactly what Amazon's AI does.
Yeah.
So stuff that you've looked at, so that's another form of generative AI, right? It looks at something that you've seen previously and knows about it and says, hey, you probably like this too.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you got to dive deep down stuff, because if you don't dive in deeply and you just take it at face value in the shallow end of the pool, you're going to be doing... There's no telling how exponentially bad it could get.
And let's not just focus on the bad. There's a lot of good that does come with it.
Yep.
Like I said, it's seeing cancers early. I think education wise, it could be a huge asset education wise, as long as it's getting correct information, and like for work and stuff like that, it can help with productivity. But like you said, you shouldn't rely on it. You should really use it as a safeguard. Do the research on a school project. Actually do the research, so you know it. So that way you're actually learning, and you're not just putting in a chat GPT thing where it creates a 25-page report for you and you slap your name on it, you hand it in, and you didn't learn shit. I mean, you should be doing the research your own, and then, these kids should be coming up with, using it for a template, but don't use it to just do it for you, because you're not actually learning anything. And at the end of the day, you're just wasting your money and time and education, because you're going to go out in the real world and you're not going to know shit.
That's a good point.
Again, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to take away all the scholastic achievement stuff. It's going to take away scholarships. It's going to take away I mean, somebody goes in and finds out the fact that you used your entire college degree or your entire time at college or university or whatever, and you got past it with an artificial intelligence. They're going to look at you and laugh. So yeah, dude, like I said, with whatever you point it to, it's going to get... If people don't use it and respect it for what it's being used for and what it can't do and can do and when not to use it and when to use it, that's going to be the deciding factor of which way it's going to go. People have to be responsible.
And also, people have to be responsible. People also need patience. Everybody has lost their patience. They want things right now.
And it's
right now.
The wildest thing is that we've got it. We got exactly what we asked for. How far do you want to take it? Like, how much do we want to improve before we truly understand what we're doing and what we're getting ourselves into?
I can put an order in Amazon in the morning if I do it early enough. That fucker will be at my doorstep by 6 o'clock at night.
Yep.
With some shit.
Yep.
We are a right now society.
100%.
We need to get our patience back.
Know when to open and when to close the envelope. But it's an interesting conversation. I mean, like, we could probably do you're talking about education. We're just sort of brushing the surface of what it could do for education or healthcare or whatever. It's just more of a general conversation. I mean, if we did one based on AI, we could probably do an entire series based on AI. I mean, you really could take it that far. because it's not something that has a finite ending. It doesn't have a finite answer. It's all based on theory right now for the most part. And what we can do with it, we're trying to figure out how to push that envelope.
Well, I mean, it's definitely going to be taking trucker jobs.
Oh yeah. I mean,
The
you already
workforce is going to go.
You already have automatic driving cars. So then you're talking about not just truck drivers, you're talking about chauffeurs, talking about taxi businesses going out of, even though taxis are few and far between as they
But you'll have, instead of DoorDash having regular people drive, DoorDash will probably just buy their own vehicles and use AI. Actually, taxi companies probably will make a comeback. There just won't be drivers in them.
Yeah, that's a good
Think
point.
about that. It might swing.
If you're sort of the whole thing that I'm scared of is taking human beings completely out of the equation. Because we don't need them. So where does that go? Like what is the end result? I think we already explained it. It's extinction. And are we prepared to accept that we've created something that is literally going to destroy us? I don't think that's what's really been grasped yet. If we take it too far.
Yeah.
But where's the line?
It's kind of, in a way, it is the atomic bomb, because it will eat itself from the inside out.
It's going to be going to be cataclysmic. If it gets bad, I'm telling you, it's going to get real bad.
Well, I mean, we talked about AI art and videos and stuff like that. If that gets in, like, think about how you could manipulate elections and people running for office and like high corporate positions and attorneys and judges and shit, people of power, by creating a video of them doing something really fucked up.
And there's record of it. People are able to like, say, for example, just to take that into, a piece of that and sort of show you how scary it can be. Say, somebody creates a video of you having an affair. Now, the video evidence would be damning enough. It would be able to mimic your signature. So, like, say the video was in a hotel room. It would be able to mimic your signature and that of your partner performing the affair into the books and computer system of the hotel. Like, you signed for the room. You would be able to mimic surveillance footage of you walking into the hotel with said person, even though it's fake. You would never know the difference. Like, everything. Like, that's a small example. But imagine if there was an AI that took the place of the president and you had zero idea being able to distinguish fact from fiction. You would take it today as fact. He was really up there. He said that. Like, I'm talking down to the 10th degree of replication, where it's indistinguishable, where you cannot tell the difference.
Do you think they already do that in other? Do you think our like?
I think I've never seen an application of it with visual stimuli, so like a real person, where it's indistinguishable. But they have done it with voice. I know that for certain.
You think the CIA and FBI and they use that shit to plant people?
It could be used for that. Like I said, we talk about it all the time too. We don't know what we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's always going to be the case. I don't think we're ever going to have the full story. And some of that, I could say, saves us from ourselves, but at the other token, it's kind of detrimental in certain aspects. But as I said, who holds sway over us getting that information? People we've never met.
Right. Now, you said something really interesting a few minutes ago. You said president. What's your thoughts on AI running government, having like an AI be president?
I think the real like smoking gun in the conversation is the deep thinking. So if it's just based on fact and merit, that kind of stuff, analytical data, I think we're fine. But if you're talking about the other side of the coin, where I think it could get malicious, if it learns too much, it definitely could hold sway over government, 100%. Whether it's malicious intent, whether it's benevolent intent, or somewhere in the middle. This is the thing, though. I like talking about AI in extremes because it is an extreme. For me, it's going to end one of two ways, and it all circles back to the same thing that we've been talking about. It's either good or bad. There might be some gray area, but it's going to be so minuscule, it's not going to matter. So we can either have a piece of the pie or the whole or the whole pizza. Got to figure out which one's worth it and which one's not going to, But my question, my inkling would be, and question would be, who is in charge of that? And it's going to have to come down to the same way, we do elections, I think, for state laws. or legislation, executive, all that stuff. All that stuff has to be taken into account because, right now, an executive order, there's no fight. I don't know a lot about an executive order, if there's a way around it or not, but I would have to assume an executive order is kind of like gospel. Like we're doing this. You don't have to like it. Nobody cares if you like it. This is what's happening. And
So the executive orders go to a vote.
okay,
Those
so
go to a vote.
so then we're talking about majority. We handle it the same way. And I think it needs to be a voting process. I think that's I think that is a beneficial way, but to handle the situation, number one. Number two, not everybody agrees with the government. Not everybody agrees with the way we do things. So is that taken into account?
Do you make it a populist vote?
I mean, the way that we've been as a society, living in this country at least, I mean, that's the only definitive way that hasn't gone to complete shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, dude, I think it's going to be a really definitive point in history. Whether it's happened or not, for us, it's new. For us, it's something that is happening literally in front of us. We're living it. Correct. Yep. And I think that this is going to be something, like I said, when we look back in our 70s, if we make it that far, it's going to be one of those things in history that it's like, World War I or World War II that changed the makeup of us as a human race. It's one of those factors that's going to be real, like in your face. We're living it, and we're going to have to deal with consequences, whatever those consequences might be. And we don't know the consequences because we're playing with something we don't fully understand. And that's where it gets really scary. So, I mean, I guess my 2 cents is don't get so wrapped up in finding out about it that we lose ourselves, because that's where we're going to get into real trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Is that if we lose our control and our grip on what we're doing, and it gets to the point where it doesn't need us anymore, we're going to be in a real bad way. And it's only going to extrapolate and exponentially get worse from there. Because every time, even generative AI, dude, every time that something happens, it learns. So we're just walking around doing our normal shit. It's going to find weaknesses. It's going to find loopholes. It's going to find all the stuff that we're scared about, all the good stuff. It's going to find all the bad stuff too.
Yeah, I think we're playing with fire.
But are we willing to get burned?
Oh, we are. I mean, you and I aren't, but I think there's people that are willing to get burnt. I think they're willing to, I think that this isn't like a Bic lighter we're talking about. We're talking about like a flamethrower. I think there's some people that are willing to jump into the flamethrower. Say, fuck it.
I would tend to agree with you, but
that's scary too.
It is. But in a roundabout way, we're on a path now that we might not be able to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it gets either side. I mean, either side of the coin is scary. What if we do too much good that we're not ready for that either? Either way could be bad. We could be so prosperous that, we start going, we could be so prosperous that we're overpopulated and that turns bad. It all depends on how, like I said, it keeps coming back to how far do you want to take it? How much do you want to play with this thing before it's out of control? Either good or bad.
You're never going to eliminate bad things, because if there's good, there's bad. Too much of anything is bad. You drink too much water, you could die. I mean, too much food, too much anything. Everything in moderation, and unfortunately, we don't moderate shit. It's gonna be one hell of a ride. Like,
I agree.
It's gonna be one hell of a ride.
And we're in the front seat.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we are. So, well, we're coming up on 2 hours here.
We can finish it up, I guess, with like final thoughts. So like I said, I'll just sort of reiterate my point of view, and then you can sort of give yours, and then we'll wrap up. My general feeling about AI and artificial intelligence is that it needs to be regulated. It needs to be a moral compass. I think we need to do this with I don't want to sound like too emotional about it, but I think we need to really, really study this stuff. We need to really understand what we're fucking with. Because as I said, we might be at the point of no return now. And we're living in a time where technology is only getting more advanced. And we're going to create, this is my general view of what's going to happen. I think we're going to create something that's going to put us out of business. Whether it's our lifetime or the next, it's going to happen it's already happening in front of us. With all the examples that we listed tonight, I mean, it's right in front of us, dude. And it's scary.
Yes, it is.
But I'll let you go sort of finish up your final thoughts, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think we're past the point of no return. Don't think you can go ahead and put a bunch of restrictions and laws and, blah, blah, blah. It's not going to work. You're dealing with something that eventually is going to be smarter than us. It already lies to keep itself alive and it creates backups of itself. Good luck. I mean, I think we played with the wrong toy. We got a cool new toy and we just kept playing with it when that toy is a Chucky doll, unfortunately.
Yep, I
So
agree.
that's my thoughts.
But we'll let you. I mean, this is probably our longest episode just because, I mean, this is one like Dano's stuff is sort of like the ancient history and stuff like that. This is sort of my stilo. Like I said, you could make an entire podcast based on AI. I mean, it really gets to the point where you could go down a lot of rabbit holes no matter what the application of the AI is, what it's handling. And you could make full episodes, full seasons off of just education or healthcare or government or anything like that. And we're just sort of scratching the surface of what we're just scratching the surface as human beings now, what it's able to do. And the possibilities are literally infinite. And that's that whether it's going to be good or bad, we'll see. But I think we can both agree that it's going to be one or the other. It's either going to work out really well or it's going to be an absolute cluster. So,
Yep.
like I said, longer episode than we usually do, but some of these episodes are going to be like this, guys. So I don't want to keep it too much over an hour and a half, but we only really went about a half an hour over. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I hope it sort of, got your mind thinking a little bit. I hope it sort of twinged something, whether you think it's a good idea or a bad idea. I think Dano and I could probably say also that we hope that you guys share this around because at the end of the
Yes,
day,
please.
it's just open conversation, and we try like always try to look at two sides of the same coin and sort of see where they match up and where they differentiate. So we're gonna put this up on Spotify. Like I said, we are using a new program, so if we have some bumps along the way, I think it was pretty good for the most part, but we'll post this to Spotify as soon as we get it. I mean, it'll probably take me, I might even do it tonight. And I think we have a idea to put some social media handles up too. So once we get a bigger following, we'll start maybe doing some live streams or something like that, where we'll have you guys chime in or comment or chat. We can sort of go that route where it becomes more of a Q&A from your guys' standpoint than ours. Which I think could be a really interesting dynamic if you guys have some questions that we can touch on or anything like that. Make it more of like a not just a talking to, but more of a conversation. I think that'd be really beneficial, not only for us, but for you guys to get some other opinions and sort of see where we go with the conversation. Like I said, it'll be up on Spotify. We appreciate you guys listening as always. It's going really well for us. I know it's a minuscule number, but we just started. We're up to 5 followers now, as well as I think around 25 or 30 plays on Spotify, which with no media and social media or anything like that is pretty impressive. So we're gonna try to get this out to you guys as quick as we can, and hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we will see you guys on the next one.
See you guys.
See you guys.